I have pleasure in declaring the finance meeting for November 2015 duly opened. Suggest that we, and I welcome those online viewers today. My suggestion is that we will aim to have an afternoon tea break at around 3:15. So let's move on to items on the agenda. Call for any apologies.
Apologies, lateness for Councillor McPherson and Wilson.
Thank you. Also been indicated to me that Deputy Mayor Chesterman has a civic event to attend at 5 p.m.
Sorry, never happened to me before.
Christmas bells.
No, it's an alarm.
I have a civic event at 5:15.
You have one at 5:15.
Yes.
Councillor
Maybe the same one.
Gallagher.
Oh, you're going too? Yeah.
Okay,
Councillor
so
Young has indicated too.
Councillor Young. Okay, well we're all
Civic
go.
move
Okay.
today.
The environment centre thing about the lake.
Yeah.
So you civic too, Gary?
Okay, well we'll ask Councillor Mallet to reduce the number of questions today, so we can all be away by 5 o'clock.
Not prepared to make that.
All right. So would somebody like to move apologies be accepted? Somebody, yeah, thank you, Councillor Mallet. Have a seconder for that, please. Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. Those in favour, please say aye. Against? Confirmation of the agenda. Also move. Thank you, Councillor Tooman. Second. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Being none. Public forum. I've had no indication of any members of the public wishing to speak. Okay, so let's move on to item 5. Yes, I have. Yes, yeah, for lateness. So the finance meeting of the 22nd of October, item 5 on page 5. Somebody who was present at that meeting, please move those minutes as a true and correct record. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Second.
Have a seconder, Councillor Young. Are there any discussion on the minutes? There being none, those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Okay, the finance open action list, item 6 on pages 16 through to 21. Ask the CFO if he could perhaps report on item reference number 63.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The item on Claudelands, you will recall that the original email was sent out to members on the 1st of September 2015. We were requested to bring a report back to this meeting. That would have just been a repeat of what was in the email, but a full report on the financial and activity of Claudelands is coming to the February meeting, and then will be reported regularly going forward on a quarterly basis. Alongside that, the single page information that was provided to members of the committee will come out monthly from the financial controller as well, so that you have information on the monthly results for Claudelands in isolation. And I'll take any questions on that.
Just one question. One of the reasons for my requesting the information being in the formal agenda was public accessibility. The monthly spreadsheets, which are quite useful, would they wouldn't be public accessible, would they? How would that?
No, they would not be.
They wouldn't be public excluded, but they just wouldn't be readily available for the public to see, would they?
That's right.
Okay. Could we? Is there some way to remedy that?
The reason for the quarterly report is it gives additional information around the non-financial and the activity. So that quarterly report will be coming to the committee and give that information on a regular basis. The question is whether or not the public would need the information on a monthly basis, given that we actually report the overall council position only on a 6-weekly or quarterly basis. So.
Well, when I say monthly, we only ever received it at these reports, so they were at these meetings. So it was when. So that's the reporting cycle I'm trying to achieve. Okay. All right. Okay. So then, if the public want to get it, we've just got to.
Are there any other items on the action list?
Just item 62, Chair, which was the follow-up to the multi-year grant for surf lifesaving. It just seemed to me, I just need clarity around it. There was some confusion about whether the surf lifesaving had applied for an annual grant, which we've given them in the past, and that there was a suggestion that surf lifesaving were approaching the mayoral forum / regional council to try and get a regional allocation instead of dealing with all the individual councils. So my question really is, have they missed out on what would have been a normal annual grant through our annual plan process? I'm just off the top of my head, I think it was $25,000 or $30,000. So have they missed out on that, and they're now moving forward to the 16-17 draft annual plan?
Somebody, staff report on that?
I can't really give an answer to that off the top of my head. So
Surf Lifesaving,
Yes,
thought
yeah,
they
I
had
understand-
applied for their normal
understand.
grant.
Understand your question, yeah. So your question is, have they missed out as a result of the transition from moving away from the grant from Hamilton
To
City
original funding,
to,
that's right.
it being regionally funded?
I think we can give an answer to that. So I'll ask Blair to respond.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. I can give a bit of an update in terms of the regional council is obviously developing their regional fund. I'm sorry, I don't have recall the name of the fund, but it's the fund that they established through their long-term plan process. And I know that they are working through at the moment the specific framework with a view to finalise that part of this 16-17 annual plan process. And one of the intentions could well be that applications such as those for regional surf lifesaving would be funded regionally through that fund. So that is the process I understand they're working through at the moment. So they'll be looking to sort of confirm the framework and the structure and the type of grants it'll apply to. Certainly surf lifesaving type grants have been talked about. That'll be subject to the annual plan process in 16-17.
So I suppose, Chair, just to move on from there, I would appreciate an email from staff just saying that because the surf lifesaving season will be starting soon, and I just want to make sure that we haven't held out from them. I'd just like to know the status of what their normal expectation would be. Are they missing out, or are they getting it later than they expected? So no point in holding up the meeting, but I would like to know that.
Councillor Gallagher.
Yes, I express frustration, because I think was it 3 years ago, Deputy Mayor, that they came? So I think that's indicative. I express extreme frustration that it's taken this long. So the mayoral forum in terms of leadership, the regional council in terms of leadership, please sort this. And it is so obvious. The Waikato has some beaches where all of the people from the Waikato go, and we want to keep our people safe. And I think the Surf Lifesaving's request for funding is absolutely reasonable. But what we want is to get a consistent model that we can all agree on, and so that if you live in Matamata, Raglan, Hamilton, Te Amutu, wherever, the per head, the per household contribution is basically the same, because it's a regional thing. What I do want through the finance or through the appropriate staff person is, if for any reason there's clear evidence that through the system that, you know, the wheels are falling off, we should at least obviously just ensure that we're okay in terms of our Hamilton Beach at Raglan.
Absolutely. There's no, sorry, councillors, there's no indication whatsoever that their wheels are falling off. And
So that's cool.
Yep. So at the moment, it does have to go through the annual plan process for the regional council, but there's a degree of positivity in terms of support for it. So absolutely.
Yeah, and dare I say it, it's kind of, I'm not drawing a long bow, but that's all around the whole regional funding of sporting and of activities and all of this stuff. And I think Surf Lifesaving is a very good example around, you know, public welfare, public good and youth development. So it's a really good example of a regional funding model.
Thanks, Councillor Gallagher. Point noted. So,
Councillor Pester, we did have a chance as a council to support this, and we chose not to. We referred it on to the regional council.
That's right.
So it has been before this committee in the past.
Well, it's been before
and the
it's
decision
been
was
part
made
of the
not-
annual plan, one of part
Yeah.
of the annual plan submission.
That's right.
Yeah,
And we made a decision as a council
That's right.
not to support.
not to support it.
Okay, well, let's get an update from Dee, I think, perhaps if she can circulate an update as to where we are with Surf Life Saving, specifically where we are and where it's actually travelling as far as the regional funding is concerned. Yep.
Andrew, was your point that you feel the matter has been resolved and has moved on?
Well, it's in regional council's
Yeah.
court now. We've had our opportunity to discuss this around this table, and we voted as a group, as a majority, not to fund it. I mean, now we're coming across trying to be the knight in shining armour.
Let's get a proper update on this instead of perhaps guessing
thank
where it's sort of got to.
Now, Andrew's made a point, Chair, and I actually can't recall, but I know there was a debate around the continuation of the grant as opposed to what makes more sense, the regional funding. But I'm more concerned about the gap between the two decisions. And did we make that decision? I just need to be reminded.
Okay, right. We'll get that covered in the report. Are there any other items on the action list that elected members would like to? One of the, I have been working closely with Democracy on the action list, and the intention is to try and tidy this up so it's not quite as long as it currently is, and to try and get a organisation-wide standard action list instead of perhaps the hybrids that have developed. So I will move that the report be received. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mallett. Any discussion on the action report, action plan? Those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Dates for reporting, which is item number 7.
Just noting, Mr Chair, that the December meeting has now been cancelled, and the business cases that would have been considered at that meeting are now being referred to council.
Thank you for that update. Is there any discussion on the dates for reporting to the Finance Committee?
I'll move the report.
Thank you. Move a seconder. Any discussion? Those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Now we come to item 8, which is the 6 monthly reports from the chairs of the 3 subcommittees. So I'm going to ask the chairperson of the External Funding Subcommittee to speak to her report, and then any questions, and then we'll put the recommendation. Margaret.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I would take the report as read. I do have much pride in drawing councillors' attention to our major achievements. That 6 million, and I'll say that again, $6,195,425 in funding was awarded in the 2014-15 year, and the bulk of that that quantity through the Cycleways, Hamilton Gardens and Playgrounds project. So you can see that if you have a look at the thermometer gauge, which pictorially shows the target at 7.03 million for the Hamilton Gardens development, and look, we're very close to that amount at 5.59. So the last part is historically always a little slower moving than the initial part, but we're very confident that we'll reach our target. And if you have a look at the diagrams, I thought a pictorial presentation might be have more impact and be much easier for you to digest on page 27. But you can track since 2009 that the efforts of the External Funding Committee have reaped numerous rewards. If you have a look at the funding applied for in 2014-15, there the reason why there is such a large discrepancy between the 14.9 that we applied for and the success of 6.195 was the fact that we applied to the Next Foundation for a substantial amount for the upgrade and development of Waiwhakareke, and that was in excess of $6 million, and we were unsuccessful with that bid. And to put some context around that, the successful applicants were major ecological and nationally significant projects around the country. We're talking all over the country. So it wasn't just a citywide project, but of national significance. So we were a little disappointed, but understood under the circumstances. The pie graph shows that all central government has contributed the bulk of our funding through lotteries, cycleways, etc. But we have had significant contributions too from our local philanthropics, both individual and community, and we're continuing those that journey to keep securing funding for the city. So that's all from me. Any questions?
Yes, question from Councillor Mallett.
Thanks, Margaret. Just the local the orange one. Presumably that's Well Networks, Trust Waikato. Is those what you mean by the
Yes.
film?
Of that film, yes. Yeah.
Okay, who else is there? Just the major one?
Grassroots,
Okay. That's a gambling though, isn't it?
yes.
Yeah. So I just wondering.
Oh, gaming societies, yeah, that'd be Grassroots, NZTC, but the local philanthropics would be Well Energy, Trust Waikato, and some of the smaller philanthropics as well,
Okay. Thank you.
family owned, etc.
So there'd be the Firth Trust would be in there, wouldn't it?
Yes, Potters, Food.
Others. Yeah.
Okay.
I
Thank
don't
you.
want to name too many because some of them don't want to be named, so yeah, I don't want to speak out of turn.
Any further questions on the external funding subcommittee report? Would you like to move
Yes, I'd like
that
to
the
move.
report be received?
Yes.
Have a seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor Mallett. Any discussion on the report, debate? Those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Second report is the CCO report from Councillor Mallett.
Thank you, Rob. I'll take the report as read, except for there is an error, page for which I take responsibility, page 30, M, Vibrant Hamilton Trust. The heading to that paragraph is that we had considered the annual reports for all of our CCOs at the 21st of October 2015 meeting. In actual fact, the Vibrant Hamilton Trust report had not been considered at that meeting because at the time the audit had not been completed, so we didn't have the accounts there for them. So that, if you just delete that, then the report is accurate. My apologies for that.
Questions on Councillor Mallett's report? Councillor Gallagher?
The first time you've made a mistake.
13th of November. Normally, the other members get informed. Was that just for one item? My diary doesn't record that meeting. Was that?
Sorry,
Was
mate.
that the 13th of November? Was it a short notice meeting? Because usually non-members get to know and can come along if they want. That's all.
Yeah, I had a debate with whether we called it an extraordinary meeting or a abnormal meeting. But did you not get
No.
notified? Okay. I wasn't aware of that. I'm sorry.
So that was the
That was the
LGFA.
special the meeting to
Yes,
try
so-
and yeah.
So that meeting was a meeting called at the very last minute in respect of approving the proxy form for the LGFA AGM, which is coming up Monday. And it was a public meeting, and my apologies, it should have been actually notified to all councillors. The minutes of those meetings are available, and the decisions that were made reflected for that proxy form were made as well.
I'll reserve my rest for the commentary section. Really positive. I've finished my question.
Okay,
I'm just going
all
to
right.
make some comment when you invite.
When we're in debate. Okay.
I'll move the report be received
Have a seconder, please.
with the amendment,
With the amendment.
deleting the Cabinet Environment Trust.
Have a seconder, please. Thank you, councillor Young. Okay, open for debate.
Yeah, look, I just compliment the committee on its work, and I think that's good. I think direction of travel is good. I will continue to pursue the right of all of elected members to finalise, and I think item 5 summarises that. Some excellent people, really delighted, but I do believe the final decision on those matters should come back to full council. I will continue in terms of good governance to support that. And one of the opportunities I have being on the Waters Committee will be to pursue that very issue around how we, on that major venture, should you go to a CCO, how do the 3 local authorities appoint and ratify directors and some governance processes around that. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I just want to, on a really positive note, apart from that disagreement with my colleagues, and I'm personally saddened that I'm hoping one day we will restore good governance in that way, but that's as it is. I'm in a minority at this point, but I feel that very strongly I'm denied the right as the elected member for West Ward to have a say in that. But having said that, putting that to one side, I do really want to compliment Gary, you and the team for the work you are doing. I think the committee's doing some very, very good work.
Thank you, Martin. Just to be clear, you're challenging the delegations to the formal
It's not a reflection
delegations.
on your work. I continue
never
to
took
challenge
it
the
that way.
delegation.
Never
and
took
I'll
it
certainly be
We're-
pursuing that, particularly when it comes to the waters. Obviously, I'll be pursuing that aspect of our delegation.
We're in debate, guys. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? Okay, all right. Well, those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Now move on to the third subcommittee report, event sponsorship. Deputy Mayor Chesterman.
Thanks, Chair. Happy to table and presume all councillors have read it. Be happy to respond to any questions, and when you are ready, I'd be happy to move that the report be received.
Any questions of the chair? Councillor Gallagher.
Sorry, I'm just, we're having ongoing discussion, in terms of the long-term strategic stuff. Mr. Chair, do you have anything to add to that? That's an ongoing broader discussion. You're doing good work, obviously.
Yes, thanks for raising that, Councillor Gallagher. I think the big challenge moving forward is the fact that we are sitting on a very small events fund in the scheme of things, and I'm quite relaxed about that, but I think it is a discussion where council next year will need to confirm that they're relaxed about the budgeted amount, or whether they feel that it's contributing to lost opportunity. We haven't identified anything yet that might be a lost opportunity, so that's not an argument we can even discuss. And as you will be aware, at the last discussion, there was a surplus that has been distributed to 3 key events. And there was a debate around whether these events and the funding we give them should be an open or not. And I'm equally as relaxed about that. But I'm reminded by our General Manager, Sean Murray, that there are contracts that are signed that has confidentiality in them, and I think that's really a matter for council. I mean, when we're down to fundamentally 3 events, there should be no real secret about what money is being paid to for members of the region and Hamilton to enjoy those opportunities. So I think, Councillor Gallagher, that is a matter for a wider debate. Happy to share. I do have the figures here, but it's not appropriate to share in an open session, but very happy to share them afterwards.
Thank you.
And if you want to change an approach to that, then perhaps the committee can have a look at it and report back to council with a recommendation.
Thank you. Any further questions of the chair? The chair has indicated that he's ready. He will move that the report be received. Seconder from Councillor Young. Is there any debate on the report?
I'm just a little unclear, Mr Chair, whether are we using these reports as just information received, an update, or are we using it to debate matters as well? Because if that's the way we're going to go, it's great. I'd like to get my teeth into some issues too.
Well, point of order, because that's obviously directed at me.
What is the point of order?
Point of order is, could the chair just clarify that we have every right to debate a content of any report in this meeting? Could you rule on that?
Well, it is the report that is being received, and it is the report that's subject to scrutiny, in my view. So, so I believe that there is an opportunity to debate the report.
Thank you.
The content of the report?
Yes.
Excellent. That's great.
That's
I
what
was
we
just
do on
understood that it was here to receive the report. If there is an opportunity to debate other matters, that's fantastic. I'll make the most of that.
Point of order, what other matter was
What's
I
the
debating?
point of order?
Well, the point of order, that is a remark that's very clearly questioning the right of a member to adequately scrutinise a subcommittee, that we get a 6-monthly go at scrutinising the affairs of that particular subcommittee. So my message to any elected member, I'll continue to use my function as an elected member to scrutinise.
Point of order. My point of order is I understand exactly what the chair has ruled, and I'll go by the chair's ruling, not by any other comments from any other councillor.
Well,
And now I'm very clear, thank you, Mr Chair, so thanks very much.
the chair could help you.
All right. So we have the motion on ready to be voted upon. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, now move on to item number 9, which is the 10-year monitoring report, which is a report of 4 months' activity through to the 31st of October. Just before I ask the CFO to speak to the report, a reminder that there is an error on page 47, which is under planning and development, and that error is in the last variance explanation, other expenses, 128 unfavourable, and it says there, due to the district plan legal costs being less, and that word less should be more, than year-to-date expected. So that change, and in addition to the report that is included with the agenda, there is also a financial report year-to-date on Claudelands, and this was emailed to all elected members on the 11th of November, and this sets out the year-to-date and year-to-date budget and the variance, as well as the annual budget of the activity at Claudelands. So over to the CFO to speak to his report.
Thank you, Mr Chair. As noted, the agenda item in front of you, starting on page 33, is the financial performance for the 4 months to the end of October. Many of the trends that we saw developing at the quarterly report to 30th of September have continued through the month. You will have noted that we have introduced a comparative of the last reported amount, in this case September 2015, and we are showing this in brackets against each of the key metrics. Year to date, Council is $12.1 million ahead of the balancing the books target and has a debt position that is currently $43 million below the year-end target at 30th of June 2016. Our 12-month rolling debt to revenue ratio is currently 183%, and this is also below the target at 30th of June. Explanations for variances over $100,000 are contained in the report, particularly in the group of activities commentary starting on page 45 and running through to page 60. I'd just like to highlight the following. Development contributions have been strong in the early part of this year, with the 2 exceptional months as sections were released. However, DCs are difficult to estimate. Over the last 12 months, monthly collections have varied from a low of just $259,000 to more than $3.3 million in different months. Overall, we have been collecting DCs quicker than expected, which increases the likelihood of shortfalls later this year or in future years. As reported last month, planning and development revenue has been higher than expected in both consents and in land information memorandums, or LIMs. Limb activity has reduced over the last 2 months and is approaching levels that are closer to normal, possibly reflecting a reduction in the property sales in the area. Some of the costs of limbs fall in other activities, and there is also cost still to flow from the inspection costs related to the consenting activities. There's continuing work to analyse the likely impact of consenting activities, particularly on year 2 of the LTP. As has been noted on page 47 of the report, the last sentence was incorrectly amended as the papers were being finalised. The district plan legal costs are more than expected, not less, and this is a major item contributing to the $128,000 unfavourable variance. The legal cost represents $79,000 of that variance. Our future proof at $27,000, which was a timing difference, is another major contributor. The legal costs relate to the district plan, and the timing of these are difficult to estimate. The activity as a whole is on budget at this time and expects to finish the year on budget. And as there is no certainty that the variance in relation to legal costs will remain to year end, no allowance has been made on the risks and opportunities at this stage. Excluding the planning and development revenue, the groups of activity have started the year well with a $4 million improvement to date. Some of this will reduce over the remaining 8 months as planned activity is completed. Committee last month asked about the rates income variance, and this is explained on the top of page 39. The other variance that was asked to be reported back was the parking revenue, and you may recall that I reported back during that meeting that this reduction was the result of the sale of the Knox Street car park. 2 key variances affect only the accounting surplus. Vested assets have now exceeded the expected level for 2015-16, following an extremely strong August. The year-to-date unrealised loss on interest rate swaps has reduced to $6.5 million, down from $7 million in September. Capital expenditure is $4.9 million less than expected. This is a shortfall of 6% of the total annual program. At the same time last year, we were approximately 13% behind the program. As is highlighted in the traffic lights in the type column on pages 61 through to 65, a number of our infrastructure programs are subject to third-party commitments. And I'll just ask Chris Allen to comment on these if he's got any additional comments to add.
Yeah, Councillor, we've signalled some potential delays to projects now through the notes on page 66. A number of them relate to the third-party issues where we're not fully in control of the timetable, where we're working with developers, and particularly the notes 3, 6 and 10 relate to Peacock Stage 1. So Peacock Stage 1 is an area, a growth cell for us, which has got fragmented land ownership, and it's quite difficult to coordinate all the individual landowners together. So we're still in active discussions with those landowners, but it's looking increasingly like that might not come together to complete the works that we anticipated in the long-term plan. We'll certainly know more about that early in the new year on that aspect. Just in terms of the capital project, there is another large a reason for some behind program, and they relate to renewals and upgrades at our 2 treatment plants. So, look, I believe they just matters of timing. Those renewals in the treatment plants, working treatment plants, are very complicated, and we've spent a lot more time just on the planning and investigation. But at this point in time, we think we'll catch up by the end of the year in terms of the expenditure.
Thank you. As a signal on the risks and opportunity, there's also a reprioritisation possible for minor capital renewals between the water treatment and the wastewater plant. This is currently under consideration, and formal approval will be sought in February if this is to eventuate. As this is the last committee meeting of the year, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Your Worship, the Chair and Deputy Chair and members of the committee, plus our staff for their support over the last year. And I'd like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. In the meantime, I'm now happy to take questions.
Right. So call for questions, bearing in mind that this is tracking 4 months into the year, and I guess the major points are around how well we're tracking in line with budget, as well as the points taken on the capital expenditure. So Councillor Mallett has a question.
Thanks, Rob. Paul, you said, and I think I picked this up right, that vested assets as at 4 months has already hit our annual budget.
That's correct. So the annual budget is based on an estimate of when things will actually occur. And in one case, we have large development that has resulted in some of the assets being vested earlier than was expected. But
That's
overall,
astonishing, isn't it?
overall, we will in fact exceed the annual budget as well.
So the impact of that to council is our assets go up, which is good.
That's correct.
Our maintenance and depreciation will go up, which is not good.
That's correct.
And does that suggest that we're like? So would it suggest that we're going to get 4 times as much vested assets, or it's just arrived early? Or I know it's really difficult to tell.
Yeah, in this case, we have in the month of August, we received one very large vesting asset. It's in relation to a PDA in the Rotorua area, I think it was. The vested asset was in fact originally estimated to come in over the course of the year, not in one large amount. So that has affected the timing. It does have a flow on to maintenance and depreciation, though the maintenance impact is generally pretty small in that first year. And the long-term plan did take into account the maintenance on those assets going forward.
So that would show up on page 38 under other revenue, wouldn't it?
That's correct.
So if we had budgeted to be 4.3 million, we're now 16.3 million.
That's right.
Okay, all right, thank you. Just on my old favourite, carryovers, just in terms of highlighting it,
You mean deferred capital expenditure?
carryovers, aka deferred capital expenditure, yep. The CapEx budget for the year is 84 million. We're a third of the way through the year. So if it was linear, and I appreciate it's not a linear process, that there are reasons why we might be doing more work in the later part of the year, weather and planning and approvals and whatnot. So we should have completed 28 million dollars worth of work. We've completed about 13 million, so we're about 14 million behind. That plus the $5.5 million ahead of additional DC budget will have an impact on our debt figure.
Yeah, so the debt figure is showing an improvement that in combination with the DCs, the fact that we have 6% of our capital program behind budget at the moment, and the opening position improvement that we have already previously reported in our annual report, it does mean that we are below our debt position at this stage, and I would expect that to flow into the annual planning budget as well.
Okay, so just from a point of clarity, if you look at page 36, you'll see our overall debt position is $43 million better than we thought.
Just to be clear, that's better than the figure for the 30th of June 2016.
I beg your pardon. So better than.
Yep.
Okay, so that's better than what we actually thought was going to be at the end of the year.
At the end of this coming year.
This financial year.
So
yes.
right now the debt position is $43 million below that. Yep. We obviously have capital expenditure that will occur between that, and that figure will narrow.
Yep.
But at the same time, we do expect it to finish the year
to be below
in an improved position.
Okay. So just, and I've asked Paul if we can get this figure in the future, this reconciliation. At the moment, that $43 million would be made up of 5.5% of development levies, 5.5 million, beg your pardon, $14.5 million worth of carryovers, which may catch up, $15 million worth of opening balance. Okay, so that's 35 million. Any idea where the other $8 sort of roughly where the other 8 million would come from?
Yeah, you're comparing a year-end figure with one right
Okay.
now, so you've got also what the net movement is across the remainder of the year.
And I appreciate there's probably a couple of million worth of operating surplus in there that would improve it. Okay, thank you.
In general, working capital movement, Councillor Mallet. So from time to time, depending on the phasing of rates and so forth, the timing goes up and down. We may well get our rates in quarterly, but we don't spend it quarterly as well.
Okay.
So there's peaks and troughs there as well.
So appreciate, I'm just talking big pictures and I'm just trying to get a level of comfort about where that figure comes from.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit more comfortable now, having got that level of comfort. Now, the other issue, and this is a more of a ongoing policy type issue regarding development levies. Development levies are collected for infrastructure that's already built and for infrastructure that has yet to be built. To the extent that development levies are collected for infrastructure that has yet to be built, I asked this at the last meeting, last finance meeting, I would have thought that created a liability. But apparently I was advised that the accounting standards, that's not the way you treat it for accounting standards. Is that right?
That's correct.
And I'm happy with that result. Okay, I would just ask that if it is possible, that I think we do need clarity on that, whether or not it's an accounting standard. You know, there's accounting standards and then there's reality. And if there is a significant amount of development levies that have been recorded as income to the council and also reduced our debt level, that councillors need to be aware of how much liability does actually relate to that. And I don't know how, I mean, it might be a hell of a difficult job. I don't know how you'd go about it, but I do just think we need some clarity on whether or not, in actual fact, all of our DCs are for stuff that's already been built, so there is no liability, so it's just catching up, or if we are incurring a significant liability into the future.
So this was raised at the briefing on Tuesday.
Yep.
I have not had a chance to look into it as to how easy or not it will be to do that, but it is on my list of things to action over the next little while.
Okay, so can that be on this committee's action list? Yep. Okay, thank you. Just on the big picture, page 38.
Just coming back to that point, do you have a sort of a timeline as to when you might be able to report back on that? Because it may well be that the amount involved is not material anyway, or it may be, as Councillor Mallet fears, it might be quite a significant amount.
Yeah. So because I'm not 100% sure how the DC model works in relation to that, I'm not sure how long that will take, but we should be able to report back probably within the next 2 weeks as to how long it will take.
I'll be delighted if you can do that.
I mean, as we did at the briefing, we did undertake to have that available for the February meeting in relation to the annual plan budgets as well.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask on that subject? I just see this as a possible risk to council, and people around this table need to know where we stand on this.
I agree, and it's a question of material as to how material it is. I think the last time we delved into some DCs that had been indicated to us had been received in advance, and we hadn't spent the money. We were looking at something like about 15,000, so it wasn't a significant amount, but it was certainly something that we needed to know as to what the risks were as far as financial risk was, insofar as whether or not we could have been legally challenged on the collection of that amount that hadn't been spent.
Just to be clear.
And I think, just to be really clear, I mean, council only collects DC revenue on the basis that it either has completed the work or it has the work planned as part of its 10-year plan. So from that point of view, yes, you may be collecting DCs, a small amount of DCs that is in relation to activity that is still to occur, but the majority of what you're collecting is in fact in relation to infrastructure that has already been constructed to arrive at those sections so they could be released. So, from that perspective, I think the risk of there being a material amount outstanding that creates contingent liability where there could be a possibility of repayment is actually very small. And I know the auditors did have a look at this in the lead up to the annual report. There was not a material amount showing at that point. I would be very surprised if it has become material since then. But exactly how much is there and how quickly I can get that information, I'm not sure.
Can I just make this absolutely clear that our development contributions are completely and utterly levied in accordance with legislation, so there's no question on whether or not we have any liability outstanding. We do not. The question is whether or not we have an obligation to spend that money and the availability of debt caps. So it's effectively making sure we don't overspend and spend the money we've taken from one purpose and spend it on another. So the key point here is our development contributions are absolutely levied and are robust and legislatively stack up. This is a case of making sure that we keep track of what we've captured and make sure we don't spend it going forward on something else.
That might be robust and it might stack up through the chair, but I think that it should be part of our reports going forward.
I'm not disputing that at all, Councillor. I'm just clarifying for them. There's a bit of concern here and people mentioning liability and so forth. We don't actually have a liability. We're taking what we've taken and we're taking it legally. The question is about transparency, and I understand that, Councillor King.
Thank you.
Just on that point, I would add that if we are going to get ahead of ourselves, it'll be now, because at the moment DCs are gushing in, and there's no way in the world we're producing as much. We're not doing as much work, putting as much work in the ground as the DCs are coming in. So at the moment, if we ever are going to get into that scenario, it'll be a scenario like this, and it would have been a scenario in 2007 or something last time that we had this extraordinary level of growth.
And that's one of the reasons we continue with a conservative approach to estimating DCs.
Yeah, I'm not denying that your accounting's wrong. I just want to know that off the balance sheet, there is something out, there's a lot of money coming in for which there is a promise attached, that we promise we'll build this or whatnot, and I just want to know how big the promise is that's been unfulfilled so far.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. The balance sheet, page 40. You'll see a other financial assets there, 29 million. It says go to note 1, and I go to note 1 and there's not 29 million anywhere. There's no 29 million, so that's a very poor note.
So there will also be other financial assets down under the term assets, 8570. Combination of that 8570 and the 29010 is in fact 37,580,000, which is a breakdown of the term deposits, shares.
Okay.
And
Can I just ask that whenever we do a note with a figure, that figure has to be conspicuous in the note. Otherwise, all you do is confuse the reader. And I was a confused reader, so I could not for the life of me reconcile that figure to the note. So just explain again that so other financial assets.
So the purpose of this note was a question originally around the cash and financial assets that were on the bottom of the cash flow compared with what was showing in the balance sheet. And the purpose of this note was to show the 3 points where those assets were in fact showing. So the cash and cash equivalents, 90,453,000 is the figure that's in the cash flow, and then the other financial assets, which is broken down into term and non-term, makes up the remainder.
Okay,
I acknowledge your comment, Gary, around.
Okay, in terms of proper disclosure, the 29,010,000 should be reconciled there. I should be able to see the figures that add up to that, or the take away this from this, and you get 29,010,000. Otherwise, it's not a useful note. Okay, thank you. So we can change it. So can you walk me through how I get to 29 million?
I suspect that, and I can't confirm this off the top of my head, but I suspect the 29,010,000 is exclusively in term deposits. The remainder of the term deposits and the shares and the loan investments would be the term assets.
Sorry.
The other financial assets. If you add the 85 and the 29 million.
So where's your 85 coming from?
There's your 37 million.
So the 8570 would be the remainder of the term deposits, the shares and the loan investments.
Yeah, that 85
Oh,
there.
so something in the balance sheet.
And that one there, they're all note ones. If you add the note ones together, you come back to that figure there.
Okay. Well, that's
So I note your comment,
hopeless disclosure.
and we'll improve that for next time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now back onto my favourite, Claudelands. Now, I'm going to talk to the document that was
You've
emailed
got to
out.
ask, you're asking questions, councillor Mallett.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, no, you're not talking.
Oh, beg your pardon, sorry,
asking
questions,
yep. Okay.
So I guess we're on page 49, which is economic development, in which is included the Claudelands results. I don't know how many councillors have got have brought along the Claudelands thing that would have been sent out to you. So I apologise if you haven't brought it along. But just reading it, look, it's budgeting for a $9.4 million loss. Currently, looks like the loss is going to be $8 million, which is good.
So
However,
is there a question coming?
yes, there is. Yeah. My concern is that
A question?
Would you agree that I should be concerned that Claudelands' revenue activities has dropped by 165,000, although there's 12%. So that's, when you're talking hard figures, we're down in the revenue. We're now and the reason that Claudelands is tracking ahead of budget is mainly due to a change in its revaluation or its expected useful life. So I'm concerned that Claudelands is not achieving its revenue budgets. Its revenue budgets, its revenue actual activity has been pumped up by, has been supported to, pumped up's the wrong word, supported by something called subsidies and grants. Can you tell me what the subsidies and grants was, Sean? $23,000.
Yes, look, I can't answer that question offhand. It's not any form of subsidy or grant that comes from within council. I really need to understand what that figure is. I just don't know the answer to that. If I could elaborate on your earlier point about the income, yes, you're correct. It's falling behind at $165,000 on a year-to-date basis. I have a degree of confidence, however, that we are going to catch up on that income given the forward book that we have and even the trading result that we're going to have for the month of November. I'd also highlight that the operating expenses, that's before depreciation, we have an OPEX saving of $147,000 for the period as well, and much of that is to do with the less revenue and the less expenditure as a result of less revenue. So yes, we're still a bit short of plan, but I have a degree of confidence we'll catch up.
Okay. Can you identify what other revenue is?
Other revenue will be income that we get as a result of third-party supplier costs where we make a margin.
So just give me an example of what those are.
Audio-visual equipment.
Sorry?
Audio-visual equipment.
Oh, okay, so if someone
equipment.
has a conference there and they hire and...
Correct, and we hire another.
You get a little bit of that, do you?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's up. Why is your revenue down then? So that would suggest that more audio-visual gear is being hired, but our activity, our conference revenue is down.
Look, I'll have to find out the exact detail, but I think you'll find that there's a mix of the yield that we get against different types of products that we sell over and above our core hire rates. So it depends on the nature of the various events we have.
So you're confident that year budget, that the annual budget revenue is achievable and will be achieved?
At this point, I am, yes.
Okay, so what's...
However, I would highlight that we are keeping a control as we go on our expenditure.
Okay, thank you. That's all, thank you.
Rob, thank you, councillor Mallett. Further questions? All right, no further questions. Let's go back to the recommendation for management that the report be received. I will so move. Do I have a seconder, please? I'll second. Thank you, councillor Wilson. Is there any discussion or debate on the report? Okay, there being none, I'll put the vote. Those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 10, which is the key projects monitoring report for October.
Mr. Chair, I'll speak to this if I may. I'll take the report as read, with the exception just to note for council's information that the finance system implementation is now complete, and there will be a closeout report shortly. The budget module is now live. We are populating that module ahead of the annual plan process.
Thank you, CFO. Any questions for the CFO or Eon, who's also here?
I'll move the report.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Is there any debate on the key projects monitoring report? Okay, those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. IT update. Welcome, David. Take the report as read, and is there any further comments that you wish to make to the report, David, before we ask for questions?
Only that the CFO stole our thunder a little bit there, Mr. Chair. So probably the big news in this
Can deal with that offline.
in this period is that the budget module that we've been working on for probably the last 12 or so months has gone live. Went live very smoothly, and as the CFO said, is now starting to be rolled out through the finance team, which is a good one for us. Other than that, I'll take the report as read. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Mallet.
Just on page 78, the paragraph 20, there's no, you're confident you can, the program remains on track to deliver the outcomes outlined in prospective business cases within an allocated budget. So you're still confident that everything's going to happen within time on budget? Yep. Thank you.
I'll move the report.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any debate on the report, that the report be received? There being none, those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Item number 12 is the municipal nursery business plan. Welcome, Helen.
Good afternoon, Chair and councillors. Just got Maria Barry on her way from the nursery to answer questions, but I'll introduce the report.
Thank you.
So the report's come back to this committee just from the July Finance Committee. At that meeting, staff were directed to undertake a business plan and pursue option 4 from the nursery review report that was presented at that time. So option 4 was basically the status quo with some enhancements to the nursery which would allow us to make some operational efficiencies. So staff have gone away and done that business plan. We have that attached to the report. And basically it's around focusing on good practice through good budget tracking, building our relationships with local councils. We have good relationships with those councils, with some councils currently, and also with local nurseries. And just implementing some efficiencies around irrigation and also replacement of glass houses. We have several glass houses currently that are old, and our intention is to replace that with one single span greenhouse. We're not making any recommendation for changes to the annual plan. We can operate within existing budget. The income will be lower than what is in the current LTP, but we're able to offset that through efficiencies. If there's any questions? Yes.
Questions? Councillor Mallet.
Thank you. And I might need a bit of advice from the CEO on this one, but my understanding is when I was first on council a decade ago, the Local Authority Government Act was relatively firm in making sure that councils didn't compete with the private sector. And that's one of my concerns with the nursery. How can you allay my fears that you're not just beating up our own people?
Maria Canant, she's just coming through now, so I will let her answer that question. Sorry, Maria. This is a question. Could you repeat that?
Maria, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, Maria. My understanding is the Local Government Act still tries to discourage councils from competing against private business. I just want to know, how can I be sure, or how can the members be sure that we're not competing against ratepayers using their own ratepayers' money to compete against them?
Okay, so the corner of the market, I guess, where we specialise is the eco-sourced native plants. Council requires quite a diverse range of plants for its needs across the city, so we work with a lot of the local nurseries to purchase from them, and in the eco-source line we try and grow our own to secure the continuity of supply, but we work with Full Bloom, and there's a couple of smaller nurseries in the region that we swap seed and work with, so we support each other, really.
Do you put work out to tender?
No, we don't.
So, kind of how do councillors also get comfort that you're the lowest cost provider?
In the business plan, we will be doing some benchmarking to ensure that, and that certainly will be something Sally Sheedy from Parks and Open Spaces is particularly interested in.
Okay. With all due respect, you would have a strong compulsion to make sure that you didn't look like you're competing.
Yes, that could be said, but we've really got nothing to gain because the trade lists and things are out there in the public forum, so the prices are what they are, and there's no advantage to us.
And I haven't had nursery owners ringing me to say, look, your council staff are undercutting us, so it's just okay. All right, thank you.
Further questions, Councillor Forsyth?
Thank you. Just around the fact that, is it predominantly native plants that you're propagating?
That is our main production. Because of our footprint, we're limited in terms of, we can't produce everything that the council requires. So we specialise in eco-source natives.
Okay, so I mean, I'm aware that our planting policy caters for non-natives as well.
Yep.
So you're just restricting your nursery to natives at this point, or do you have the flexibility or some sort of vision that you can change the supply or change what you're growing?
So we do grow some ornamentals where it's a viable thing for us to do, but we, as I say, we can't grow everything because of the footprint that we're on.
Yeah. Great, and look, well done. I'm not suggesting that you're doing a bad job. I think it's great work. Thank you.
Councillor Gallagher?
Yes, I totally agree with Councillor Forsyth, doing an excellent job. In terms of the growth projections we got at a workshop the other day, and of course that's somewhat dynamic, so it's a matter of making sure that our operation takes into account extra demand that's stimulated by growth. Do you have a sort of a sense of comfort there? I mean, obviously, I'm not expecting to look ahead 30 years. But...
Yes, so currently our production levels, we can comfortably hold 170,000 plants in our nursery. We're not holding that much, we're around 120 at the moment. So there is room within our current footprint to grow, and then there is scope in the business plan to complete a viability assessment for option 5, which is to expand the operation.
Because I'm relating this to the Hamilton plan and the green canopy, and the Hamilton plan, obviously, if those projections of the 185,000 or whatever by 2026, and you have to be a bit cautious, obviously, because it's a projection, just to make sure that we deliver, if you like, on the green canopy concept.
So our budgets, I mean, most of our customers are internal customers. We do have some one-off projects, but those budgets are all set through our LTP cycle and planning. So if we adjust those with the state of growth.
That's good, thank you.
I'll move the report when ready.
Yeah, I've got a question from Councillor King.
Why are we looking at option 5? Maybe it's a question for Richard.
I can answer that question.
Thank you.
Okay. So it was as part of option 4. We did say that we would look at further expansion just as a scoping exercise. So no commitment to that, but there is work being done in the market. It also means that we can look at our costs and rates of production and our capacity.
So are these glass houses on reserve land?
Yes.
So Richard, are we allowed to sell to the open market off
I'm assuming Helen might
trees that are grown off reserve land? because that's where this is heading on option 5.
Like Helen said, it was effectively a scoping exercise. I think part of that scoping will work out what we can and can't do.
Yeah, yes, it will take all of that into account.
But we already know you're not allowed to sell off reserve land. You're not allowed to
I
commercialise
think it
reserve
depends.
land.
It depends on the purpose of the commercial exercise or the commercial activity.
Aren't we marginal already selling to other councils without actually going out and selling into the private market, which is option 5?
Are we looking at selling? The option 5 is more around scoping the market for who we can sell to. So at the moment we do have relationships with other councils, but we don't. We haven't gone wider than that. But there are, like River Authority has different clients also looking for eco-source products. So it's really just around looking wider and where the gaps are in the market, and if that's something that we can fill.
Just for clarity, as I understand it, the option 5, expansion of current operations servicing other councils, was part of the original review. This business plan was to look at option 4, which was as per the council resolution. So from that point of view, the work that's been done by the staff is actually around option 4, not option 5.
So there won't be any scoping done around option 5?
There was some scoping done, but it was a scoping exercise, not a full business plan, as was requested for option 4.
So why are we scoping option 5? Are we looking at going there or not? What?
This business plan is looking at successfully completing option 4, and if there was a need from the council, from you people, we would scope the option 5. But for the purposes of this business plan, we are planning to operate under option 4.
Thank you.
So just getting some understanding, option 4 does provide for external sales to other councils.
It does. And
Yeah, okay.
we currently sell bedding, annual flower plants,
Yes.
to 3 different councils.
Okay, so looking at page 89, which is the revenue budget over the 10 years, it seems to me that over the 10 years, the budget suggests that we become a little more dependent on a higher percentage of our sales going outside of the organisation to the externals. Rather, it moves from about 81% in 15-16 through to about 74%.
Yes, and part of that will be securing external funding for some of our natural areas across the city, which we already work with, TUI 2000 and other groups.
So that's the external, some of the external income doesn't come from other councils, but from Whakairiki and a few others who we regard as external, but the plants are actually planted within the city.
Absolutely.
Okay. And there's some for NZTA too. Is NZTA fit into that?
There is some work being done currently with the Wairau Drive roundabout where it joins on to Cobham Drive, and looking at supplying plants for the Hungerford Gully there.
Okay.
So those sort of projects, absolutely.
So how do we lock in these going forward to get some certainty? You know, if the revenue, the external revenue dependency is going to become higher later in the 10-year cycle than it is now, are there ways that you feel confident that we can lock in some contracts to ensure that that external revenue becomes a little more certain as we get closer to the time?
Absolutely. So that's about me meeting with the right people at the right time and getting a handle on what exactly their plant needs are.
Because there is a sort of a gestation period, isn't there, from the time it's this big to the time it's big enough to plant? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a 2-year lead-in time.
Yep, okay. All right, further questions? Question?
How can we have certainty around linking orders with production?
So we're getting, most of our income comes from the internal business units, and we are securing the orders in advance. So I already have the 2016 orders, and I have the 2017 orders, which means that I can go and collect the seed that's required for the plants for 2017, so we're not growing any more or any less than we need to.
All right.
So, because the only orders that you're linking between production and what you're producing is because it's internal. So,
And we do grow some lines on spec. Every nursery does. You do have to take an educated punt at what's going to sell, and that's based on previous year's production, but we are trying to turn it around so that the main production list is based on orders, and the amount grown on spec is less, therefore the wastage is less.
and come the end of the year when you've got leftovers, they aren't sold to, I understand they may go to staff, I haven't got a problem with that, but they don't go to the public. You don't have a public sale.
Absolutely not.
Yep. And in paragraph 24, you talk about increasing the revenue by making some operational efficiencies. Is that you haven't been manager there for long?
No, I came on board on secondment in about April, and I've been finalised as the manager in September.
So these are operational efficiencies that you'll see and you'll implement as you go.
Yes, so we've already started, and we have some prices to upgrade the irrigation, which will reduce the amount of time spent hand watering and such like.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions? Councillor Forsyth has moved item 13, that the report be received and that capital funding of the 45,000 for the glasshouse replacement. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Young. Any discussion or debate on the motion? Your Worship.
I speak for the motion. I want to thank the staff for preparing the business case, because when we received this report a few months ago, what that report highlighted was that there were a number of inefficiencies and a number of issues with the operation of the nursery. And that included plant planning, production, all of that, and pre-ordering and growing appropriately. It included the way the nursery was operating and being run, and the budget management. So all of the questions that councillors have raised today were ones that were discussed and raised when the report first came, that drew us to the conclusion that option 4 was the way to go. That was to get the nursery we currently have in shape and operating according to the way it should, in a cost-effective and appropriate manner to deliver plants predominantly to the city. So I'm very pleased to welcome you and pleased to hear the answers to your questions, because in a very short time that you have been there, you have already demonstrated that you've put in place a number of things we talked about when we got this report first time a couple of months ago. And so thank you very much for that, and I'm pleased to see that the business plan is practically focused to get on with how it should be run. The only matter I raised, Chair, is the revenue and making sure that we have that right in the budget for next year's budget. I have some confidence around that, because that budget is driven predominantly by pre-planning and producing to order in advance, yes. Growing from seed, yep, which is what was highlighted in the first report. We weren't kind of all over that very well. So that gives me confidence that we've kind of got the budget as certain as we can, given, plants are, living things, so things come and go and fashions come and go, even in planting. But I would ask that certainly for the February budget meeting, at least some consideration is given of the reality check needed on this budget for the next financial year. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak for or against the motion?
As I said, I want to strongly underscore this is an excellent operation. Just reminds ourselves in our scrutiny function, and what I scrutinise here is a really good operation with some incredibly dedicated professionals. So I'd be grateful if you would convey to the whole team, not just the writers of this report, but the team throughout the gardens that are doing so much good. And giving reality to the green canopy in the Hamilton plan.
Thank you, councillor. Any further? Okay, there being none, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Thanks, Maria. Thanks,
Thank you.
thanks, Alan. Next item is item 13, which is the Rotokauri Far Western Wastewater Interceptor Extension Business Case.
Thank you,
Welcome,
Mr. Chair.
Chris.
Look, I'll just take the report as read, just some quick comments. So this relates to the 2 kilometre extension of one of our major wastewater interceptor pipes in the city on the western side through the Rotokauri area. The project, as discussed with councillors through development of the 10-year plan, is a pretty critical project in terms of citywide benefits, as well as enabling growth in Rotokauri. So I'm just happy to answer any questions on the business case.
Thank you. Question from councillor Mallet.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Chris. On page 95, under the key issues, paragraph 14, the last sentence says, with this new ability to manage and divert flows, council will be able to undertake other key capital updates, including fixing a critical bottleneck in the network at Moreland Avenue. Can you just expand on that?
Sure.
Is there something we can't do without that's?
Yeah, so we have a section of pipe in Moreland Avenue, which is by Church Road in the northern part of the city, and the pipe is smaller than it should be, so it's a constriction in the network, but it's full and flowing all of the time. Once we've put this pipe in, we have the ability then to divert the flow from that main pipe to this pipe and get it to the treatment plant, and then we can work on Moreland Avenue to increase the size of that pipe and the bottleneck. So very difficult at this point in time on the live pipe, because it's a major interceptor pipe with the wastewater flowing. We'd have to come up with some really complicated pumping over options. But with this pipe in place, if you look at the network wiring diagram, it gives us another route, I guess, to take the wastewater while we do this work. And we're designing for that in this project by putting a pretty smart bit of equipment at the junction where this pipe meets the western interceptor, so we can divert the flow for ongoing operational issues.
Thank you. So, who will pay for the cost of the upgrade to the Moreland Avenue? Is that a maintenance? It's a increase in the level of service, or does the developers pay for that?
I would have to check our DC allocation. It's likely that there would be some component of DCs, but I think it would be very low because it's probably more of a level of service. But that thinking would have gone through in the DC allocations. So it was certainly logged, I think, as a level of service project predominantly rather than a growth project.
Okay, thank you. On page 96, paragraph 26, there's just something, the last sentence, there are some alignment options which will be considered as part of the project as it progresses. I don't understand what that means.
So that's sort of not macro decisions, but sort of project decisions about do we take it through this property or that property. So we've got some options of how we get it from point A to point B. So part of the project is to find a line through. So the considerations for us are the future roading network, because we like the pipes to be close to the roads, but it's through third-party property. So part of this is negotiating with property owners where we can get the optimum line through. We've got to have regard to our structure plan and where we think the roads are going to be, but we need to negotiate the private property ownership issues with a number of property owners.
Thank you. And sorry, going back to that last one about Moreland Ave, the upgrade to Moreland Ave is not included in the 7.8 million, is it?
No, it's about...
It's another project.
It's about another $7 million in the 10-year plan, but probably in the second 5 years of the 10-year plan. So remember, when we developed our 10-year plan, we had some discussion about the order and priority to do those, and we ended up bringing this one forward because there was some logic to it, as I've just explained, and we put this one at the second 5 years after we've done this one.
Okay. And just the last one, paragraph 36 on the same page, page 96, you talk about consequential project operational maintenance costs have been allowed for and are included in the current 10-year plan of a value of $65,000. What are they?
I don't know the exact detail of that without checking, but there are things like once we put in a new bit of kit, there might be extra pumps that have got extra power or extra operational costs that go with it. So consequence of the capital project, you increase your operational costs. So it could be, an extra pump and the servicing of the pump.
Okay, so that's not a, what do you call it, a miscellaneous on the capital cost.
No.
That's a suggested increase to our operational cost.
Yes.
Because of having this new thing, the new pipe.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you put just a static pipe in, we wouldn't do that. That just becomes part of your operational budget. But when there's quite lumpy items that come in, sometimes if you put in a new component in the treatment plant, which means we've got a new dosing of chemicals that we've never had before, would put that as a consequential OPEX cost. So it's in that category.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Before I go to the Mayor, who's next on the list, just a question that follows out of Councillor Mallett's on that alignment options in paragraph 26. Is that likely to have an impact on your expectation of the capital cost? If there are some issues between third-party property owners and where the pipes are actually put in terms of gaining the most efficient alignment?
There's certainly significant issues to work through. So we make some estimates in our budgeting of what the property cost issues are going to be. We hope we've got those right, but we are trying to guess the optimum alignment and anticipating success in negotiations sometimes. I think there's a time aspect to that as well in terms of once again, it's a bit of a third-party issue when we're trying to negotiate property. It's something that's not 100% in our timing to how those negotiations go. But we make, like a lot of these projects, we make estimates of what they will cost and pretty educated estimates, and largely we're right. Sometimes we're not quite right, but mostly we are right.
Okay, thank you. Your Worship.
Okay, so I'm looking at diameter size of pipes on page 116, and I'm looking at the map on 102. So this is a wastewater interceptor to service stage 1, right, of Rotokauri. I'm reading this right, aren't I?
Yes, it goes...
Yeah, which is the bluey, purpley Moby section on page 102 map.
Let me just go to... yes.
Which is basically to unlock 1,300 plus 2,700 future residential lots. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
So by putting this pipe in, we're unlocking a further around about 3,000 residential lots to what's already there.
We're putting in a significant bit of infrastructure to help unlock those lots. Like There's still roads and there's still
I get all that.
other size pipes to come off this big pipe. So,
But
this is the
predominantly
major. This is the major.
So the question I have then relates, I guess, to stage 2 and the diameter size of the pipe. Now, I don't profess to be any expert at all on wastewater pipe diameters, but I guess it's a basic question. Is it big enough, or will you need to come back later when we want to unlock stage 2 and say, I need to make it bigger or divert it like we're talking about with Moreland because it's not big enough? I guess that's my question in a simple way.
Yeah, and I'm just delighted to get a pipe-sized question from you, Your Worship.
Okay. But I've gone right to the engineering mechanics of it all.
Yeah, no look, you can be assured that that we're forward-thinking in putting in these pipes, so we would have had consideration to the future of stage 2. I was just flicking through to see whether we had one of our strategic diagrams in there, but I don't have it in there. But I can give you assurance that is part of our thinking.
Yes, so this pipe, while...
Will be around then, Chris?
Unlocking stage 1...
No, none of us.
It also provides benefit for stage 2, so that given the way things are growing fast and the fact that developers want to go out there, in 10 years' time, you're not going to come back and say, oh, well, that one wasn't big enough, so we need to upsize it.
No, there is a, I haven't got the diagram here, but there's probably the concept of a northern interceptor as well that comes into the plant, and that'll be to serve lands to the north of the city, and some of them are outside the city boundaries at the moment, but when they develop, so some of that stage 2 might be serviced from the northern interceptor rather than this far western. But the strategic planning we do through our master plan will look at the footprints and how much would service from this and how much from another interceptor.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councillor Forsyth.
Yeah, just wanted to check that this major pipe and the land that's going to be unlocked, that was, we fast-tracked that in our last 10-year plan, did we not?
Yes.
It was originally
the drafter was in about year 7, and we brought it through to year 2 by swapping it with that Moreland Road one.
That's right, okay.
And there was, as we just said, there was some logic that we discussed in forming our 10-year plan and doing that was teased out through the submissions, I guess, from the 10-year plan.
Okay, and just in your experience with doing big pipes like this, you're saying that the two main risks are what's under the ground, you don't know till you dig it up kind of thing, and what sort of design implications, etc., come from that, and the third party other landowner agreements. So those are the two biggest ones?
Yes, so that's certainly the two biggest ones. I think in this area we have a little bit of experience because we put about 2.5 kilometres of the same pipe under the Te Rapa bypass. So we do have a reasonable understanding of the ground conditions and the difficulty of doing that. So we've tried to capture that obviously in our cost estimates and our methodologies. But like a lot of these projects, it is the land access which is it can be quite difficult to work through. But look, in saying that, we're having great discussions with the community out there. We've got a community that wants the pipe. Once again, there's a bit of multiple land ownership, and just pulling everybody together is part of the challenge of a big project like this.
So when you say you've got a community that wants the pipe, does that mean the pipe or the land that you're going through is green fields at the moment? It's just bare sections, it's not people's backyards that you're digging up?
It's a bit of a mixture, but it's largely land under control of recognised developers. So Rotokauri Development Limited, Everton Trust, Wintex, a big player there. So HJV. So most of the land is in control of developers who want to develop that whole section. So, but in there's pockets of other land ownership
as well. So we've got a good I don't know, engagement or strategy to deal with them.
As councillors probably know, we've got quite a collaborative group going on the ICMP, Integrated Catchment Management Plan, and that's been a good forum to engage with the multiple developers and try and understand all of their interests, sometimes competing, sometimes aligned, and just try to pull that together.
Just one more question. So what's if we approve the business case today, what's the next step?
So the next step, like we've started the engagement with the landowners and the people. So the next step is to probably engage consultants to do the detailed design. It's a very complicated project, so we need detailed design. And probably approving the business case gives us the mandate to go and start. It might not be property purchase negotiations, it might be easements, but the mandate to go in and start talking seriously with those people once we've locked down the alignment. We've already done a lot of work on the alignment, so we sort of know where it wants to be, but we can start locking it down and progressing it. So with an aim to, I think, start construction probably next financial year. And I think it'll be in the business plan somewhere, the program.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Look, I'm happy to move when you're ready.
It's in para 40, I think you've got the start of the work plan.
Thanks, Chris. So I'm happy to move when you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion,
just obviously in terms of the delegation and that the final decision, in terms of the business case part, the final decision rests with this committee. In terms of delegation?
It'll be a recommendation
okay.
to council.
No, it's approved.
Democracy.
I just want to check delegation. I think it sits with this committee.
I think it is.
Sits with the committee? No, that's fine.
Committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so Councillor Forsyth has moved. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Mallett. Is there any debate?
I'd like to
Your
speak,
Worship?
if I may, Chair. Look, I mean, I know these business cases are quite long, but it is really useful to read them in detail because it does also give a very good information from a strategic perspective about why the investment in these sorts of infrastructure projects is critical for the city, and particularly up that end of the city where we know that we have willing and able developers who are keen to get going. I just also want to comment that there is some general discussion going on about whether there is enough competition in the north in terms of land availability and development. And I'm very pleased that as a council we moved this project forward in the 10-year budget to enable this piece of infrastructure to go ahead in that Rotokauri growth cell, because continuing to invest in infrastructure like this and enabling a bit more competition in the marketplace ensures that we continue to sort of focus on that supply and demand curve and making sure that, as best we can as the enabler, that we maintain a broad range of affordable housing options in the city. So I'm really pleased that this business case has come through, that we did move it in from the 10-year plan, moved it forward, and that this work can get underway now. And thank you, Chris, and your team for the work you've done so far, because there is a good group of developers up there who are working closely with the council, and I think that's a positive thing as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Anyone else wish to speak to or debate the motion? There being none, those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. I think it's probably a good time now to stop for an afternoon tea break. It's just gone 3, so if we could be back here at 3:15, please.